Today we're going to talk about the rapture, a word that's not even in the Bible, but I'll tell you where it came from next.
The program you are about to watch is part of a free series we are making available to you as a gift from Greg Fritz Ministries, entitled 7 Undeniable End Time Events. Visit gregfritz.org to download the MP3s and watch the streaming video for free by entering code FREE at checkout. Are you tired of hearing bad news? Tune into the good news of the gospel. Welcome to Good News with Greg Fritz.
Hello, I'm Greg Fritz. Welcome to the Good News program. We are doing a series on end times that I've entitled 7 Undeniable End Time Events. And we are going through these 7 events. The reason I do it this way is because there's a lot of controversy, a lot of disagreement on the timing of end time events. But these 7 events are things that most Bible scholars agree will happen, and they will happen in some order. The disagreement is about what order they happen. So we're going to teach these events in separate sections that you can learn about, because the events themselves are made up of several different scenarios or characters, players, events that will happen within that time frame, and those are for sure. It's just, when is the rapture going to happen? When do you believe the rapture is going to happen? When do you believe the tribulation is going to happen? When do you believe the millennium is going to occur or begin? And so they disagree on the timing, but the events themselves, there's a lot of agreement on that, consensus of opinion on that, and then within these events, the actual storylines are very clear in Scripture. So there will be things that will happen, for example, during the Ezekiel 38 war that are very specific, and we can look at those things. There are things that will happen during the tribulation that are very specific. So we can let the theologians argue about when the tribulation, the rapture, the Ezekiel 38 war, the millennium, the judgment, and all that. We can let them argue over that, but we can also study at the same time what's going to occur as these things unfold. And I enjoy that. It's exciting and it's edifying, and we should look forward to it. What I want the teaching here to do for you is to encourage you, not to depress you. We should not be looking ahead with dread or fear, or wish that this hadn't started in our lifetime. We're looking and watching things that have been prophesied, and it's very exciting. And God has these events under control. They're going to happen exactly the way He said they were. And we're going to watch the events that occur in our lifetime. We might as well know what's going on. And so I believe that the first thing that we're going to see, major end time event, and I'm going to list these 7 for you once again. Number 1 is the Ezekiel 38 war. We're talking about that right now. We're going to finish that up today and go on into the rapture. I believe the Ezekiel 38 war could happen at any moment. Many Bible teachers believe that the rapture of the church will happen before that. Some Bible scholars believe the rapture is going to happen in the middle of the tribulation. Some believe it'll happen at the end. But I believe the Ezekiel 38 war could happen at any moment. And that is when Russia and Turkey and Iran and others invade Israel from the north, and God Himself defends Israel. And it's going to be a great defeat. And I believe, from what I've read and studied, that it's going to set the stage for the Antichrist to come on the scene and begin the tribulation period. And so we've given you lots of facts on this already. I'm going to recap just a little bit, and then we'll move on to the rapture. But I can't recap every show, and so I encourage you to get the study notes. All of these events and all the details are included in the study notes, and they are free. You can go to the website and download yours and print them out, or you can call our helpline, and we will mail you a free copy of these study notes, and you can keep them in your library. You know, most of the time we send you study notes and you're able to watch the program and follow along with the study notes and you know, while we're doing the program. These study notes, you can follow the news, you can follow current events, you can follow the end time events, and you can say, hey, this is the Ezekiel 38 war. Maybe if we're wrong about the timing of the rapture, you could go, hey, this is the tribulation. I'm watching it right here on the news. I'm in it. And I don't believe that we'll go through that, but if we do, you certainly want the study notes. They will help you know what's coming. And so you may want to leave some behind for your friends that aren't going to make the rapture. This is the entire series. You say, well, how can you be so jovial about something so serious? Listen, I've just gone too long. I am not going to get uptight. I don't care that we live at the end of the age. I didn't choose to live at this point in history. I love God. God's not wringing His hands. God's got things under control. He's going to protect us. He's going to provide for us. And these end time events are going to happen the way they're prophesied. Even though none of the teachers maybe agree on how they're going to happen, these things are going to roll out exactly the way God said they would. And so in that we can be confident, and God has a place for us in the cleft of the rock under the shadow of the Most High, under the shadow of His wings. He's going to take care of His church. There's no question about that. So if you want to get all 20 sessions, we have them available with the free download or streaming. You can go to the website and find that in the free download section, or we have the USB version for a gift of $30 or more. We'll send you the USB version, and the USB can be plugged into your car for audio or into your TV or computer for video, and you can watch this series over and over again, because there's just a lot to it. And I may have to reteach this again in the future because you can only get to so much. I don't want to spend 6 months on this, but we want to hit the high spots and give you a kind of a working knowledge of these 7 events. So the Ezekiel 38 war is when Israel is invaded by Russia. That's the main force here. And we've seen Russia invade countries in recent times, so we know they're capable of it. And what did the world do when Russia invaded Ukraine? Well, they basically stood back and watched. They've tried to help in some degree, but we're certainly not going to defend the Ukraine. And according to the Scripture, when this happens with Israel, the world powers are not going to intervene. They're simply going to say, are you really going to do this? Are you going to? It'll be just diplomacy talk. There's not going to be any action to stop it. So God Himself will defend Israel and destroy 5/6 of the invading armies. It'll take 7 years to clean up the remains. It'll take it's going to be a massive battle and a massive victory from a small country that's outnumbered, because God's going to fight. Here's some of the results of this invasion according to Ezekiel 38 and 39. First of all, a mighty earthquake, Ezekiel 38, 19 and 20. A mutiny among Russian troops, Ezekiel 38:21. A plague among the troops, Ezekiel 38:22. We don't know how long this actual battle is going to take. It doesn't tell us, but we know the outcome is a complete victory, and the battlefield strewn with bodies and weapons. It'll take 7 years to burn the weapons. It'll take months and months to identify the bodies. It's going to be a tremendous defeat. And then floods, great hailstones, fire, brimstone, Ezekiel 38:22 and 39:6. 83% or 5/6 of the soldiers will be destroyed, Ezekiel 39:2. And this sets the stage then, as Israel has this huge victory while the world watches, it's going to put things in motion in a greater sense. Here's something that Jack Kelly, an end-time teacher, a comment that he made. He said, I believe the dramatic victory the Lord wins over Israel's enemy in Ezekiel's battle will convince them to officially reinstate their old covenant relationship with God, and it will fulfill the remaining 7 years of Daniel's prophecy, which would be the 7-year tribulation period. This will require two things to happen. They'll need a temple for worship. We see prophecy about the temple being rebuilt and reinstated, and the sacrifices being done. That will happen in the days of the tribulation as God begins to deal with Israel again. And so what Jack Kelly's saying is this war is going to put God back in touch with Israel, and they're really going to begin to worship Him and serve Him the way they did in the Old Testament. So they're going to need a temple, which is in the works, and it's the temple that's later desecrated by the Antichrist, which kicks off the second half of the tribulation. And second, the church will have to disappear. So as God deals directly with Israel, the church, Jack Kelly believes, many of us believe, that the church will have to be removed, will be raptured, will be out of the scene, so that God can then, for 2,000, think about this. Since Jesus was raised from the dead, for 2,000 years, God has been dealing with the church. And that has been His focus. We're His covenant people. We're His children. And He's dealt with us directly. We've evangelized. We've built. We've grown. We've expanded. But there's coming a day when He will begin to again deal with Israel in Jerusalem. And their temple worship will be restored. And the Antichrist will get involved. The world powers will all come under one ruler, which would be the Antichrist, and Israel's going to be involved in a treaty with all of these players, and that's going to happen. But his point is the church has to be removed in order for that to begin again, and I agree with that. And then it says, as we see, circumstantial evidence weighs heavily in favor of the Antichrist revealing himself on the heels of the battle of Ezekiel 38 and 39. And so that's going to really change things when that war happens, and it'll create a season of peace so that the Antichrist can come in and say, let's all just calm down, let's all get together, let's go forward. The economies are in shambles, and you need someone to unify. I'm the one. And Israel's going to believe that, and they're going to make a treaty with the Antichrist, and the Antichrist is going to represent, the 10 horns, which would be 10 European nations, and basically the world. And so then he goes on to say this is Jack Kelly. We've also seen that for the final 7 years of the dispensation of the law to be completed, that would be the 7 years of tribulation, is actually going to be a continuation of what was happening before Jesus came, this dispensation of the law. So it went on for all those years, and then there was a pause, and the church existed. The church came into being. Then the church is removed, and then it will finish this 7 years of the dispensation of the law. No Old Testament prophet saw this 2,000-year period that we've been living in, which is the dispensation of grace. It interrupted the dispensation of law, which began with Moses and the giving of the commandments. So his point is the church needs to be removed. The dispensation of grace would be over, and then God can finish His dealings with Israel directly. That means the church has to disappear. Paul wrote that Israel had been hardened in part until the number of the Gentiles has come in. That's Romans 11:25. And so that's what's been happening. You say, well, why haven't the Jews recognized God all these years? We've been trying to tell them that Jesus is their Messiah. Well, their hearts were hardened. They have been blinded until God deals with the Gentiles. And I am so thankful that God made allowance for us. I'm glad that God opened the door for the Gentile world, which includes most of us, to come into the church and have a relationship with Him and be blessed the way we are. That means as long as the church is around, Israel won't be able to recognize, these are Jack Kelly's words, and I believe they make total sense. As long as the church is around, Israel won't be able to recognize God's involvement in their national life. But the battle of Ezekiel 38 will be such a miraculous victory that it will reawaken Israel to God's presence. Isn't that powerful? So as God intervenes on the behalf of Israel, they're going to say, wow, God really is our God. There really is a God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they're going to renew this covenant with Him, complete with the temple worship. And it has to be so because we know in the tribulation period that the Antichrist is going to desecrate the temple. So there has to be a temple between now and then. And we believe that this Ezekiel 38 war is going to start that process. And really, if you read some of the books that have been written lately about end times, Israel is getting things in place for the sacrifices, the right kind of heifers and cows and things, and the temple instruments. They're getting things ready for that end time temple to be built and go into practice. So that's it. That's happening right now in our lifetime. So in my opinion, Russia could invade. Now they're going to have to probably get finished with this Ukraine invasion, and all of that needs to. But all the while, they're using their resources on this war with Ukraine, and you know the Western world is financing Ukraine, and Russia, maybe China's helping them. I don't know, but they're using vital resources on this war, and they're going to be in a place of poverty, which is going to really motivate them to invade Israel. We know that from Ezekiel 38, the reason that they're going to invade Israel is for the spoils, is for the riches, the prosperity that Israel has. So you can just see these things coming to pass. I have a picture that I found online from the Jerusalem Post from last year, and it has, in the photo, I could show it to you, but it has the President of Russia and the Prime Minister of Turkey and the President of Iran. These are the three main nations that will invade Israel. They're holding hands, and the caption is, they're vowing to destroy Israel. I mean, that's not some Bible teacher's book. That's not some drawing that an eschatology professor drew up. It was literal front page news in the Jerusalem Post. These guys are not trying to fulfill Bible prophecy, but they've been brought together already. It's just amazing. I saw it and I was like, that is just... So I sent that picture to Joseph Morris, who really did a lot of study on it, and he said, I already have that picture. So it's been out there since last year, and it's powerful. It's a visual sign that these things are coming to pass quickly. Now, I didn't say that Ezekiel 38 was written to Vladimir Putin. It's just the leader of Russia. So I don't know that it's going to be during his regime or not, but we do know that Russia, Turkey, and Iran are the nations that are mainly involved. So whoever leads the nations at that time will be who those verses are specifically written to. All right, so let's go on to the rapture. And I've put this as number 2, the number 2 event. In fact, I'll go through these quickly. Number 1, the Ezekiel 38 war. Number 2, the rapture. Number 3, the tribulation. Number 4, the second coming of Christ, including the battle of Armageddon. We don't want to leave that out. Number 5, the millennium. Number 6, the great white throne judgment. And number 7, the new heaven and the new earth that God will create. So those are the 7 undeniable events. Nearly any end-time teacher is going to agree that those events will occur. I believe that the rapture will be either number 1 or number 2, and right now we're going to cover it as the second thing that happens. So the rapture. In John 14 in verse 1, Jesus said, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also." So he's talking about the catching away of the church, going to heaven and coming back and receiving us to himself. So this is all about the rapture. Now, notice that he begins by saying, "Let not your heart be troubled." There's something about end times that has troubled the saints since the days of Jesus. When he began to talk about these things, people must have had fearful reactions. So he has encouraged us not to be afraid. Don't let your heart be troubled. And Paul has said, comfort yourselves with these words. Don't be in despair. Don't be discouraged. We need to be encouraged that we're living in the end times. Don't allow the state of the world to get you down. A lot of the things, you have to be, let's just be analytical about it for just a moment. There are a lot of things that are on the news, that are reported on the news, that are frightening, that are concerning, that are disturbing. But think about this. If you didn't see it on the news and you just lived in your house, in your town, and you go from work to the grocery store to the house, would you really even know that those things were going on? In most cases, no, you wouldn't. We have to guard ourselves against these things because we have access to so much information, and a lot of it doesn't affect us personally. I understand the country's going in the wrong direction, and I understand the concerns about the global welfare and the morals and the decay. These are the times we live in. But it doesn't change the fact that Jesus said, let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Let's make sure that we don't get disturbed and troubled about things that don't really apply to us. I think there's so many things happening so fast, and they hit you, so hard. I think some people have developed a dependency, an addiction to the next conspiracy, the next fearful scenario, and have developed a tendency to want to have something to worry about. Let's not live that way. Let's reject that lifestyle. Yeah, have you heard someone that's always worried about something? They've always got something, and they'll worry about that until something greater comes along. And then it's like they forget that, and they'll latch on to something else because it's even worse. Let's not allow the enemy to lead us along from conspiracy or from tragedy or from news event to news event. Let's be joyful. Let not our heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. I'll give you an event to latch on to. Jesus said, in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. There's an event to think about. Jesus is preparing for us. And if I go to prepare a place, I will come again and receive you to myself. The joy of the fulfillment of these promises should overwhelm and outweigh any fear that we have about current events. And I'm serious about that. The joy that we should have about the promises that God has made to us about our own future should be so real to us that they outweigh any fear that we would have about whatever's happening next on the news or whatever Russia and Iran and Turkey decide to do. We should be, we should have our heart and our confidence in God and don't allow it to be attached to these events that are surely going to happen. In fact, it's going to be so intense that Jesus said that in the last days, men's hearts would fail them for fear of what's coming on the earth. Well, if that's all they had to look forward to, I can see why. But we have something else to look forward to. We can put our hope in God and the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. And we're going to make it. We're going to be fine. We're going to overcome. We're going to be cared for, protected, provided for until then. Say, how do you know? Because I know the Bible. The scriptures that promise protection and provision that we've spent so much time on this program have not been suspended during the end times. They haven't been called back. God didn't say, you know what, that was going to last right up until 2023 and a half, and then you're on your own. That's not how it works. We have a covenant with God. He keeps His word, and He's going to keep His word in our lives. So Jesus said, if I go to prepare a place, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. This is what we call the rapture. He's going to come back and get us. The word rapture, that English word, is not even in the Bible. In 1 Thessalonians 4:17, here's where we get it, and I'll give you the history of this. Paul said, then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up. And that's the word that we use for rapture. It's actually the Greek word harpazo, Harpazo. So it doesn't even sound like rapture. We will be caught up, harpazo, together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. That word means to catch away, to pluck, to pull, to take, to carry off, to claim for oneself. So we're going to be caught up. So where does rapture come from? It comes from the Latin translation of that word harpazo. The Latin translation. You say, well, why do we use that? I don't know. If it were me, I would have just said harpazo, or I would have said caught up. But the Latin version of that is rapere, R-A-P-E-R-E, and that's where we get the word rapture. You may not like that explanation, but it's talking about being caught up into heaven. It's also the same word that's used when Philip was witnessing to that Ethiopian eunuch. He baptized him and he was caught away. It's the same word, caught up, harpazo. And when Paul was caught up to the third heaven and saw things and heard things that it was not lawful to repeat, it's the same word. He was caught up, harpazo, or the Latin version is rapere or rapture. So even though the word is not, rapture is not in the Bible, the terminology or the event is in the Bible. Being caught up, caught away, taken, carried away to oneself, that is in the Bible, and it is applied to us, the church. And we're going to look at it in 1 Thessalonians and in 1 Corinthians 15, where he gives us specific details about this event, and it's something we should look forward to. And I don't know the repercussions. We're going to talk about that. What's going to happen when millions of people are caught up by the Lord? It's going to be, the world's going to have to deal with that reality, and it's very soon. It could happen at any moment. If we've got our events out of order, the rapture could happen first, and Ezekiel 38 second. That means the rapture could happen at any moment, at any day. And we need to live like that's the case. Well, that's all the time we have. We're going to continue this teaching on the rapture. Get the study notes. All the details are in there. They're the most complete study notes that I've ever done. We're going to put the ways of giving at the bottom of the screen. I encourage you to get involved in God's economy. If time is short, and I believe it is, we're fast approaching a day when your money is not going to be worth anything. You know, the minute you go to heaven, your money is worth nothing. The minute we're raptured, your money's worth nothing. The only way to utilize finances is to do it now. And some of our funds ought to be invested in gospel preaching. So if you agree with that and you'd like to get involved in our ministry, we have ways to give. You can text to give. If you text that number and follow the prompts, you could become a partner today by hitting recurring giving. You can also do the QR code, call our helpline. We'd love to help sign you up as a monthly partner. If you'd like to give a one-time gift, we are paying TV bills and production costs right now, so we could use your help to keep this program going. Thank you for being with me today. Don't miss the rest of this teaching. Until then, remember this: the good news is so good, the bad news doesn't matter.
End-time teaching has always been controversial. In this series, you'll learn the 7 end-time events that will happen according to Scripture, and why for Christians, the good news just keeps getting better.